Hey you, it's me. And I was just listening to a YouTuber. I think it was Actual Justice Warrior, who was talking about this guy who was paroled after the most heinous of heinous crimes, dragging a young 16-year-old girl behind into some alleyway or something, bashing her on the head with a cinder block, and then having fun with her, giggle giggle. But he's over 50 now, so he should be out of prison. So they let him out of prison, and then what happens? Shock and surprise, not being remorseful for the first reason why he was in prison, he did something similar to get him back in prison again. And this, of course, made me think of little Gyp, who has no remorse for anything that she's done. And I started thinking about some of the things that I've read about her, the FOIAs, the text messages between her and Nick before the crime occurred. And it just makes it more and more obvious that Nick was not understanding of what was going on. And one of the things that he said really stood out the most was, "Do you want me to put another baby in you, darling?" Because he didn't really understand about sex and how it works and what it does. Gypsy does. But I don't think Nick really did. Why would he say, "Do you want me to put another baby in you?" Because Gypsy was trying to convince him that she had gotten pregnant, even though he couldn't really perform properly. Because, well, who could get excited looking at Gypsy? That's my opinion. I'm going to say it. Anyway, so obviously Nick this struggles mentally, and Gypsy used that, obviously. Why, we've all seen this, we've all heard it. It's not news, but it just makes me angry. But the reason why Gypsy claims that she and Nick did their crime was because Dee Dee was abusive. I'm just going to say it. Abusive. Okay. Even though we've never really seen any proof of that except for Gypsy's word. And to be fair, you don't always get to see proof of it. Yeah, I didn't have any proof, not really, except for the way that I was acting and things I was doing, But Gypsy doesn't do those things either. She doesn't have any reactions, any reactors as somebody who was abused. But she and Nick did their crime, and now she's out. But then there's something else. She claimed that Ryan was abusive. So why didn't she do the same thing to Ryan that she did to her mother? And now she also claims that Ken, several times, they even set it up in the Lifetime show, Life After Lockup, that Ken was being abusive. And he was kind of being a dick. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He was. So why didn't she do to Ken what she did to her mother in order to get away from the abuse? I mean, she hasn't done anything except complain about it. She hasn't gone to the authorities about it. She's done nothing. And you wonder, well, but if she was so abused, why didn't she do something about it? But I'll tell you why. Because they are both still useful. Now, Dee Dee, unfortunately, although she loved her child and she took care of her child and gave up her whole life for her child, she became not useful. She was too sick. She couldn't really do for Gypsy the way she did when she was younger because she was ill. So, what did it matter if she was on the earth anymore? And Gypsy could spin her stories, and as a result, she only got 8.5 years for premeditated first-degree murder. All right. But when it comes to Ken and Ryan, they're useful still. She can still bounce ideas off them. She can still pin them against each other and get her little jollies off men fighting over her. That's why. I mean, if you want to, strike up the the diagnoses, I mean, that's certainly a narcissistic thing to do. Not saying that she is, because I can't diagnose unless, I'm not a professional. So I know a lot of that professionals know, but I can't legitimately diagnose anybody. So I'm not saying that she is. And as I've always said, she's not just a narcissist. She's a psychopath, which has narcissism embedded into it. But yeah, this is the thing. If they deem you useful, or maybe useful for later use, then why would they get rid of you? They wouldn't. Because you can still do things for them. And we've seen Ryan. He would drop everything for her. He's trying to play it off. I don't believe him. After hearing after hearing like 25 emails sent to her in a day, talking about how she needs him and how she'll miss him, whatever, talking himself up greatly, and oh please, I know I was mean, but I care about you. And then to do another email, it was on and on and on. I'm great, I'm wonderful, you'll miss me, I miss you, I need you. That's pretty much it. So she can take advantage of him at some point in time when she needs to. So he stays. Same with Ken. Ken has been very helpful in getting lots and lots of attention towards her because of Aurora the baby. And he backs her up 100%. Doesn't believe she could. He honestly sounds like he doesn't believe she could hurt a fly. That's a useful person. Same with Bree. Same with all the minions. They are useful until she finds them not, and then she'll throw them away. Now, I don't think any of her minions were in her life enough, with the exception of maybe Bree, that she would need to get rid of them and then throw them away, if you know what I mean. Not just ignore them, but actually harm them to the point where they'll never speak again, like she did with Dee Dee, her mother. But all these people need to be careful, because we saw what Gypsy did to her mother when she deemed her no longer useful. This is just stuff I was thinking about today. And honestly, it still brings me back to Aurora, because all these people, I don't care. But Aurora, if she is deemed not useful, which I don't think would happen for a very long time, because whether she's a baby, a toddler, a young child, a teenager, well, up to about teenager, up to 13, she will be useful. That doesn't mean that she won't be harmed. But Ken, in one of his newest lives, was talking about how CPS did check up on them. Interesting. They never mentioned that. Does CPS still check up on them? Because they should. But CPS is not 100% either. I think I told you about the story of a neighbor of mine who was very neglectful. I went to knock on her door one day and she literally had like foam coming out of her mouth. She was wasted on something, I don't know what. And I called CPS and they deemed her and her family fine. Nothing questionable. Even though this woman was keeping company with boys, 18 to 22. And she was older than me. At the time, she was probably in her late 40s. It's all disturbing, is what it is. CPS doesn't always do their job, is the point. And Ken's point, all flustered and upset. I mean, I would be too if someone's calling CPS on me. But I think he's flustered and upset for a different reason. I think he knows he and Gypsy are not always doing the right things. And he doesn't want CPS coming at their door all the time. Which is what CPS should be doing. They should be coming to their door and investigating them with lots of surprise visits to see just what they're up to. I don't know if they'll catch them in the act of doing something, but I can only hope that if they are doing something wrong, that CPS catches them in the act in order to correct it at the very least, to make sure that Aurora the baby is safe. But nobody else in Gypsy's life, I would say, is safe. Ken is so flamboyant in his expression of how shocked everybody should be that Aurora the baby is in a safe home. I don't think even he believed that. His shifty eyes. I mean, I'm not a body reading specialist like Indigo by any stretch, but the shiftiness of his eyes, the nervousness and twitches of his body seemed to indicate that even he didn't believe that. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what it seemed like. It's all... I mean, he should be worried too. Oh, and there was another thing. Maybe you law people out there would know this for a fact, but is it or is it not true that if you are married to somebody, then you can't be forced to testify against them in court? I only bring this up because Gypsy keeps teasing the whole thing of her and Ken getting engaged, her and Ken getting married. They just did a special photo shoot. Could that be in her plans? Like, that's why she wants so desperately to get married? Because if Ken found something out, he wouldn't have to testify against her? I mean, I don't know if that's a thing or not, but maybe that's a thing. Maybe Gypsy thinks that's a thing. Maybe that's why she keeps pressing it, even though she pretends she doesn't. I don't know. These are just thoughts that popped into my head. You tell me what you think. And if you know about the whole marriage testifying thing, clarify it for everybody, because I'm not completely sure about that. That's something that I've heard. I don't really know. I should have looked it up, honestly. But this was just kind of an on the whim thing. So maybe I'll look it up later. But, yeah. If you're not useful, she doesn't need you around. But right now, everybody is useful, I guess. I guess that's a good thing for their sake. They're still alive. Anyway, thank you for listening, and that's all I've got to say.